50% tariffs. Overnight, the price of Indian goods in America just doubled. From handcrafted jewelry to auto parts, from textiles to spices, an entire trade pipeline between two of the world's largest democracies is suddenly under siege. This isn't just an economic story. This is a geopolitical earthquake. Why did Washington take such a drastic step against New Delhi? Is this about trade or something far bigger? Today, we unravel the real truth behind the U.S. tariffs on India and what it means for the future of global power. Imagine waking up to the shocking headlines splashed across every major news outlet. U.S. slaps 50% tariffs on Indian goods. For millions of people, business owners, workers, and everyday consumers, those words aren't just political noise. They are a gut punch. It's not every day that two of the world's largest democracies, long touted as strategic partners, find themselves locked in a sudden economic standoff. Just months ago, the narrative was all about growing cooperation, shared values, expanding defense ties, the Quad Alliance promising a free and open Indo-Pacific. But behind the friendly handshakes and photo ops, trade tensions had been quietly brewing, like embers under dry leaves waiting for the wind. That wind has now blown, and the flames are visible for all to see. To truly understand the weight of this decision, we have to step back and look at the U.S. India trade relationship as it stood before this tariff bombshell. Trade between the two nations has been steadily growing over the past 2 decades, with goods and services flowing in both directions, from Indian pharmaceuticals and textiles heading to American shelves, to U.S. aircraft, electronics, and agricultural products finding markets in India. It wasn't a perfectly smooth ride. Disputes over market access, agricultural subsidies, and intellectual property rights occasionally flared up. But the overall trajectory was positive. The rhetoric was about building win-win trade frameworks, not tearing them down, which is why this sudden imposition feels like a sharp departure from the story both countries had been telling the world. For those less familiar with the mechanics of global trade, a tariff is essentially a tax that one country places on goods imported from another. It's designed to make those foreign goods more expensive, thereby protecting domestic producers or punishing the exporting country for some political or economic grievance. A 50% tariff is not just a nudge, it's a sledgehammer. To put it in perspective, even during some of the fiercest trade disputes in recent history, such as parts of the U.S.-China trade war, tariffs often hovered around 10% to 25%. A jump to 50% is extraordinary, and in practical terms, it can completely alter market dynamics overnight. An item that cost $100 to import from India could now cost $150, instantly pricing it out of reach for many American buyers or forcing businesses to look elsewhere. The symbolism here is as potent as the economics. A 50% tariff is a public statement, a message that says, "This is serious, we're willing to absorb short-term economic pain to send a political signal." And while trade experts will debate the legalities under the World Trade Organization and the wisdom of such an aggressive move, ordinary people will feel its consequences in tangible ways: job losses, rising prices, strained supply chains. What makes this moment even more striking is the sense of whiplash it creates. One day, you're being told that the U.S. and India are partners shaping the future together. The next, it feels like the relationship has hit a wall at full speed. The question now is not whether this decision will leave a mark. It already has, but how deep that mark will be and how long it will take to heal. The immediate economic shockwaves of a 50% U.S. tariff on Indian goods are both swift and severe, especially for the sectors most dependent on American markets. Indian textiles, one of the country's largest export earners, will be among the first to feel the sting. The U.S. is a major buyer of Indian cotton garments, home linens, and ready-to-wear fashion. With the sudden spike in cost, American retailers may quickly pivot to suppliers in Bangladesh, Vietnam, or Mexico nations that offer competitive pricing without the new tariff burden. This shift could lead to a backlog of unsold goods in Indian warehouses, reduced production runs, and the closure of smaller weaving and dyeing units that operate on razor-thin margins. In jewelry, particularly gold and diamond-studded pieces, the U.S. represents a high-value market. These products, often exported from workshops in Surat and Mumbai, will now be at a price disadvantage, potentially pushing wealthy American buyers toward Italian, Thai, or domestic U.S. jewelers. Auto parts, another key export, could see contracts canceled as American manufacturers seek cheaper inputs from other nations, further squeezing Indian suppliers. The pain won't be confined to corporate boardrooms. It will cascade down to the smallest players in the supply chain. Small businesses, many of them family-run operations, form the backbone of India's export ecosystem. A single canceled shipment can be devastating, wiping out months of expected revenue. Workers in these industries, from loom operators to gemstone cutters, face an uncertain future. In towns like Tirupur, known as the knitwear capital of India, or in the bustling jewelry hubs of Gujarat, livelihoods could vanish almost overnight. In a country where social safety nets are thin, job losses and export sectors ripple outward, affecting not just employees, but their families, local shops and service providers who depend on their spending. On the American side, the effects will be just as real, though they may manifest differently. U.S. importers who have long relied on India's competitive pricing will see their cost structures upended. A retailer who once imported Indian cotton shirts for $10 a piece may now face costs closer to $15, forcing them either to raise prices or cut profit margins. This added expense feeds directly into inflationary pressures, particularly in categories like apparel, furniture, and accessories, where Indian suppliers hold a significant share. For American consumers, this means the price tags on store shelves could creep upward at a time when inflation is already a sensitive political and economic issue. Then there's the matter of global supply chains, which are far more interlinked than most people realize. Many Indian exports to the U.S. are not finished products but components, auto parts, pharmaceutical ingredients, specialty fabrics that are later assembled or incorporated into goods sold elsewhere. A tariff that disrupts these flows forces companies to either absorb higher costs, renegotiate contracts, or seek alternative suppliers, each of which comes with delays and inefficiencies for multinational corporations that operate on just-in-time delivery models. Even a few weeks of disruption can have cascading effects: production slowdowns, missed deadlines, and contractual penalties. In the broader context, these disruptions create openings for other countries to capture market share, potentially reshaping trade routes and partnerships for years to come. What's striking is how quickly such a policy can flip the economic script. In less than 24 hours, industries that once viewed the U.S. as a cornerstone of their export strategy are suddenly reassessing their entire business model. For India, the challenge is not just weathering the immediate storm, but also preventing the erosion of market trust. Once a buyer shifts to a new supplier, winning them back can be an uphill battle. And for the U.S., the cost of sending this political signal may ultimately be borne by its own consumers and manufacturers, proving once again that in global trade, no economy operates in isolation. The political undercurrents behind the U.S. decision to impose a 50% tariff on Indian goods are as important as the economic realities and, in many ways, even more complex. On the surface, Washington frames this move as a calculated response to India's growing imports of discounted Russian oil, a trend that has surged since the war in Ukraine began. For the U.S., which has pushed for coordinated global sanctions against Moscow, New Delhi's energy policy is seen as undermining collective pressure on Russia. By targeting Indian exports, American policymakers hope to apply strategic leverage, making it costly for India to continue what they perceive as a defiant stance. This isn't purely about economics. It's a political chess move designed to signal both to India and the wider international community that alignment with U.S. policy comes with rewards, and divergence carries consequences. So, why does India matter so much? Because, unlike China, India is not a monolith. India is a democracy with a free press and a relatively open economy. It's as a counterweight to China's influence in South Asia and a potential partner for the U.S. in containing Beijing. But New Delhi reads the situation through a different lens. From New Delhi's perspective, energy independence is non-negotiable. Cheap Russian oil purchased in rupees or through alternative payment mechanisms has helped India stabilize fuel prices domestically and protect its growing economy from global energy shocks. Indian officials argue that their foreign policy is guided by sovereignty, not by the dictates of any single global power. In their eyes, Washington's tariffs are an overreach, a form of economic coercion that disregards India's right to act in its own national interest. And India has historically balanced relationships with both the West and Russia, and sees this balance as a cornerstone of its strategic autonomy.